The first panel for the day, that is speaking upon the use of tech tools, innovative technologies, and robotics in modern architecture and designing. So I would request Mr. Ajay Gautam, partner from Gautam and Gautam Associates, Mr. Abhishek Birch, partner from Design Plus, Mr. Sachin Rastogi, principal architect from Zero Energy Design Lab, Mr. Kavi Jain, Managing Director from Nirvan Consultants, Mr. Arindam Chaudhary, Principal Architect from Mix Folios, Mr. Sachin Sachdev, the founder from Vyo, Mr. Sameer Sheikh, Design Director from BDP, Ms. Shivani Khanna, Principal Architect from Studio Crypt, to come over stage. I would request Mr. Ajay Gautam sir, the partner from Gautam and Gautam Associates, to moderate the session. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just imagine that you are sitting in your Delhi office in front of your desktop, and with a single touch on that computer screen, the building starts constructed somewhere in Dubai. So it looks very funny and dreamy, but definitely in today's scenario, with the help of available technologies, we can achieve it. So, Honorable Habib Khan sir, and I must thank to LDROC to give us a platform to discuss about this latest topic related to the technology use in innovative technology and robotics in modern architecture. So, I started my career in architecture in 1984 when joined the architecture college. So I still remember the tools which we were using at that time in architecture, and most of the fellow architects of my age might be remembering that drawing board, pencil, set square and color bar, these are all the tools which we will be using while representing our ideas and presenting them in the way of drafting on the drawing boards. But we are definitely of the age which witnessed the transformation of technology in architecture, and it has totally overturned now. And it has now coming up, we are in the age where the digital spectrum and the IoT have changed our life totally. Now nobody can imagine architecture without a computer. So the computer and the technology have taken away so many things from us, like the combination of our mind, the hierarchy of our mind with our hands, when we were supposed to think and our hands were according to that, whatever our mind is thinking. So, but right now, we are doing these things with the help of the technology, and without further taking the time, I am forwarding this discussion to our panelists, respected panelists, so that we can start one by one and try to enlighten through our discussions about the modern techniques which we are going to use in coming future. So carry over to our panelists.
Hello everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this great panel. I think all of us, when we design a building, it is a happy picture till it actually goes on site and and once we start building and start the construction process, it is there when we start realizing where the role of technology is definitely becoming more and more, or going to be becoming more and more prominent. Most of the buildings we are designing, we are trying to build ourselves. And since we are a participant on the other side where we are trying to build what we are designing, we have understood in last 7 or 8 years that in next 10 to 15 years, I think less dependency on the labor-oriented construction techniques will definitely be the future. Simply because there are a lot of errors, the end products is not a quality product, and whatever you imagine on design board to get constructed on site, it becomes really very difficult, and hence technology like robotics. So there is a brick facade which we built using a parametric script, and eventually when we started building that on site without, in Europe, we would have built it with using a robot. So the robot would have directly taken up the input from the script and start laying and gluing the brick on its own. So it would have been a very smooth cakewalk to do that. But when we actually start doing that on site in India, to make the contractor understand the inputs, how to take them, how to execute them, it took a lot of time and effort. So you actually have to spend a lot of time on site executing what you have actually designed, which is, I think, becoming a very big problem where, tech tools like robots, parametrics, augmented reality will become, the future with respect to applying what you are designing.
Hello. Yeah. Morning. This is Abhishek from Design Plus. So it's interesting. The year that I started architecture was 2001, and that's the year that the poster boy of tech parametricism, which is the ZHA, Zaha Hadid Studio, started a project called One North in Singapore, and that's the first time at that scale, systems were laid out, and architects or urban designers were not swirling pens over a tracing to decide where their primary streets or their pockets of land are going to be. And it was the first parametric system that the world saw, and eventually it got implemented. So we were kind of lucky, I guess our batch and thereafter, that we were having these conversations which was new both as to us and also the academicians. My take on tech is, in my mind, I kind of divide it into 2-3 aspects. There is tech for design, there is tech for management, and then there is tech for construction. And sometimes there are obvious overlaps, and then there are days, there are moments in the practice where there is a very clean dividing line between what's happening. And I had discussed briefly with the panel last evening as well, and there are 2 case studies that I would essentially like to point out, and I think people should look at them just to see where we're heading. In terms of design, there is something that Google's parent company Alphabet tried in Canada. It's called the Sidewalk Labs, and that's also what I'm going to say is probably also a threat to the kind of practices that we are accustomed to. Mr. Khan said that yes, so we're all probably painting doomsday for architectural practices. I personally think it's a doomsday for the architectural practice in the manner that we practice. So what's happening at Sidewalk Labs is they're setting up, Google of course knows me more than my wife. And for each of you, I'm sure all of these tech giants have immense amount of data that you don't even know that you're aware of. So the plan was to put together, I think it was called the Quayside Bay. So all services, all manufacturing methodologies, all materials used, all tech processes using robotic arms or whatever, everything was getting powered into one city development, which was called the Sidewalk Labs, with the amount of data that is unfathomable, that none of us have an equal amount, have any capacity in an individual capacity to process. So encourage people to look at that. UN Studio is trying something in Austria on similar lines. CyberLabs is not getting built. That's for another political reason. And the other thing is that very recently I was part of a Digital Futures workshop program in June organized by Tongji University, and there was a company there called Hologram. That's on the tech in manufacturing. I would like everyone to look at it. It's very interesting. They're using this VR AR headsets to develop extremely potent and extremely difficult geometries with materials you can't even think and do the bending and so on and so forth. It's beautiful because you put on a headset, you don't need a drawing, you don't need a construction manual, you don't need a BIM document. When you look at the virtual space, you know where the next point is going to fit. So they're just simply joining the dots with the material, creating these local pharmas or whatever, how to execute it. But it's beautiful, and the execution was this Australian, and one of the beautiful projects is this parametric brick facade by this local mason in Australia, who's just putting on the headset and usko pata hai agli brick kahan fit honi hai. That's the beautiful amalgamation, I think, for especially the labor-heavy industry that India is as well. So I just want to kick off with these two case studies.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. And as Ajay said, we are probably from the era in which we didn't know what a computer was. And with that experience, Abhishek, let me tell you, don't undermine wives. They know better than Google. And I'm sure that the ladies here will agree. Okay, then about the topic that we've been given is very, very wide, and I would probably take it up in a slightly different manner. That the way I feel architecture is that a building is alive like a man. I think there's a very famous statement in Fountainhead. But when we look at buildings and whatever build forms that we are doing, mankind and architecture are actually combined. In fact, architecture is the bridge between nature and mankind. So as man evolves, so does architecture. And if you can look at things that way, we would probably have to keep reinventing ourselves as a profession and maybe look to the future. Like when we picked up computers, the very, very basic difference that probably I'm the senior most here, I started my architecture career in 83. So I passed out in 88. So when I first touched a computer, for me it was a very, very different experience because the very concept of drawing with hand and the scaling part of it did not exist. And that's one of the major things that's changed. But as I said, that evolution has to take place, and now architecture practice is in a very, very challenging state. Though the technologies, the curve of technologies has currently been very horizontal, but as with most technologies, once the curve starts going up, you'll almost see a vertical rise, and each one of us, for example, when cell phones started, 16 रुपए का 1 मिनट का कॉल होता था, there were very few. But within 2 years, and now you see the penetration of cell phones. So that's precisely what's going to happen to the industry also. Like, I also look at it from another perspective, like a healthy forest. I'm a wildlife fan, and if you go to a forest and in case you find that there are lots of white ants, दीमक अगर होती है, so that's supposed to be a healthy forest. Healthy forest because a white ant will not attack a healthy, whether young or old tree. It will only eat away the dilapidated stuff. So, in the same way, if we as architects don't reinvent ourselves, if we grow old, if we stick to the older thoughts, we will anyway be wiped out. So, to keep the whole environment healthy, it's important to keep adapting to newer changes. Now, right now, I'll just take up a small topic which is called, which is now coming up. It's called generative design. Now, generative design is all about having, information-based assessment, which a computer analyzes and gives you the options. Now, today we as humans are doing exactly the same thing. We carry a lot of information in our phones, and we base our decisions based on the information and data that the cell phone provides. And based on that, we are taking very, very informed decisions. Now, generative designs go a step further, in which what they do is they will collect the data from the past, do a computing, and give you various options. Now, these options will be very, very logical based, because as a human mind can just process that much of data. A computer can probably do million times faster and better. So what happens is, when you get that particular result, that output is going to be very, very organic. When I say organic, it means as architecture started, the evolution have started with the basic structure. It had to be vertical, it had to be straight lines, and then gradually we see different forms happening. Now, when we are coming to the forms, what Zaha Hadid probably did, these forms will grow organically, because that is what the logical derivation of that product is. And if you are able to get that logical derivation of the product, honestly, I feel that that will be the most beautiful thing that's possible. You don't need to add any frill to a beauty. The very word makeup is trying to make up something. When you make up a deficiency, you call it a makeup. But if you see something in the raw form, that is something which is beautiful. So precisely with generative designs, what's going to happen is, you're going to get the basic common sense product, and then the human mind has to analyze and work towards a better solution. So the shift will definitely happen. Also, gradually we'll have to start looking at the shift of architecture as an industry to a product. Because maybe 15 years down the line, an architect will have to actually execute whatever he's conceiving. So then it becomes a product, because it is not going to be something that you design and an XYZ person executes. So education will also have to take a very, very different step, because 15 years down the line, the architects who are coming in would have to be trained in a very, very different fashion. So I would just end it with one thing, that what we are now looking at is having informed and analyzed, informed decision making, along with the analyzing power of computing. That is what's going to help us in architecture further. Thank you.
So, hello all, this is Arindam Chaudhary here, and I'm the principal architect of Mixfolios. So, I'll just take the discussion further ahead from where Abhishek had left it, and we were actually quoting some examples of AI and AR, which is being used now in architecture, and I'll just take that discussion further to where AR is coming up, augmented reality is coming up right now. When I talk about augmented reality, should I start from Pokemon Go? Well, that was just a crude form of how augmented reality actually started. We should today discuss about how it is going to take place in the field of architecture. Now, so when we talk about our clients and how we are going to give them experience in the future, maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, we look at a section where we want to give clients a different ball game altogether in terms of experience on design that we are trying to offer them, and how can we do that. Now, augmented reality as a complete section comes at a macro level to it goes up to a micro level. And how does that happen? It starts from your designs that you're creating for urban level planning, where you can actually show things at a much more in-depth level, to a place where you take it to a micro level, where you can actually fit out the actual design into maybe a wardrobe section in your room, to maybe a table in your drawing room, and that is where augmented reality is coming into place. So this entire talk about augmented reality, where we would like to focus on places where the definition of giving experience to your clients in the future would definitely change. Now, if I go back, 10 years back or 20 years back, we used to, we started making 3D in our computers. And then, irrespective of making those 3Ds, the client still demanded that I would like to have a model for the building. Now, why was that so? Because he would, he liked the experience of going around that entire 3D block and looking at what he's going to get at the end. This is what augmented reality AR is going to bring for us. But the entire thing is not going to take up that, hassle of making models, getting a model maker, but it's going to take, a software to develop that same thing in a holographic manner for you, and you can have a better experience of the project or the design that you're going to take on to. So, and this does not only limit yourself to a building, but also, the cityscapes that we are designing, the urbanscapes that we are designing, everything can be bought and can be experienced with augmented reality as a feature.
Morning, everybody. I'm Sachin Sachdev. I happen to be the founder of Young. I would take it off from where Kavi left it, of change being the only thing constant. Most of the times we tend to avoid change. We tend to walk over it. But at the end of the day, it so happens that either we need to embrace it or be even more disruptive than the change which is coming. So it's like ripples. You can either be thrown up and walk into another world, or you can embrace it and then start over. As we sit here, there is already a community which is all about robots. The entire population is robots. And most of us know it, it's the planet Mars. Right? Today, Mars has a population which is only of robots. And we are talking about embracing informative architecture. I call it informative architecture because you put something into the computer, you generate algorithms, and you get a product out of it. So, as we need to embrace it and go forward with it, we need to realize how it is going to change the social fabric. We talk about architecture robots bringing in sustainability, bringing in this disruptive change, but we also need to understand the other perspective of social sustainability in populated countries like India, where when we embrace this technology or do something even more disruptive than this, then what is the kind of social fabric changes that would require to be done. Having said that, I also believe that 70% of all businesses are to do with, and as Mr. Habib also said, and one of the other colleagues also said that tomorrow is about architecture being a business. And all businesses involve 70% of humans and emotions. This is a Harvard study. Human emotions occupy that 70% of business. That really means that what we do can't be so technologically different that it cuts away the emotions from it. Because having said whatever we do, 70% of still needs to be human emotions so that we are successful. And I would like to open it to the panel on how these different aspects would come into play in the future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shivani Khanna, and I'm representing Studio Crypt. And I'm just going to give this a different dimension. I'm going to briefly touch upon additive manufacturing and 3D printing. Now, as we speak, there's a gentleman from US, Austin. His name is Jason Ballard, and he's been noted as the top 100 innovators of the past year by Times Magazine. And what he has to his credit is having built 7 3D printed residences and has been commissioned for 50 more, including by a funding from NASA to build on the moon. So we are just going to be hit by a revolution which we cannot even fathom. And there are already instances of, taking this further. We are going to step into a very highly revolutionizing concept of understanding sustainability. Now, up until now, we've been talking about net zero energy and net zero water concepts around our site planning and building planning. But the actual sustainability comes when we are able to incorporate net zero embodied carbon in our buildings. And what 3D printing or additive manufacturing is going to help us do is um, actually achieve that net zero carbon concept in our built environment. And how we see that possible is just futuristically taking you, I may sound slightly absurd, but I do see this happen in this lifetime, that we crush an existing building, a decrepit building in shambles, where we feel that the residents of the building deserve a more honorable building. And we just crush the material down and 3D print the equal amount of material into a new building. So that, I feel, is going to be such a revolutionizing change in the way we look at sustainability, architecture, and technology. And I think as an organization of multiple industries, including construction and a whole segment of unskilled gentry also in our workspace, we need to really align and relook at how we are going to be incorporating all segments into this new fabric of the architectural practice industry. So I'll pass this on to you.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah, hi. This is Sameer Sheikh from BDP. Fantastic discussion that we're having here. Since I'm the last one on the panel before we open it up for a discussion, my discussion will be kind of a summary and maybe a new perspective on what technology in architecture specifically means. One thing is, the way we have been designing our buildings since the last 150 years has been the same. In 1850, RCC was invented, and that was sort of a revolutionary point at that time where, we suddenly were doing buildings in mud and bricks and stones, and suddenly RCC came in, and for architecture, it was a whole new way of constructing something. But nothing has changed after that. Even there are very few architects who are totally exploring or taking advantage of the power of RCC, even now. And so much has happened in the IT industry, so much has happened in the technology industry, but the construction and more so the architecture field hasn't caught on to it as fast as possible. So I think what we need at this point is a bit more radical approach than just slowly adapting to the technology. I think we need a disruption. And by disruption, what I mean is making the existing technology almost obsolete by bringing in a new way of thinking and building something. So that's what disruption is, and I think we need, there's a need for disruptive thinking in architecture and construction. Okay, having said that, I want to focus on a process called as DFMA, which is Design for Manufacture and Assembly, which is kind of not new, but it's a whole different way of making things. So it actually has its past in product design. So let's say when you're making any sort of a mic or a table, it's manufactured, it's not constructed, whereas a building is constructed. So even cars for that matter, there's a certain way the parts are manufactured, they are assembled, and it has done well. The car industry has done well, the IT industry has done well, the product design industry has done well. And sort of adapting that technology to buildings has slowly started. I mean, you see a lot of buildings which are not actually constructed on site, but they are built elsewhere, off site, manufactured, and they're assembled. Now, what does that mean for the architecture profession? I mean, that's happening in construction, and traditionally what has happened is design has been quite separate from what's happening as a constructed part. Right, so the engineers and the contractors do their own thing, and then the architects design their own buildings. But when you're looking at DFMA, the architect has to be very much involved in how the building is going to get manufactured. And not just manufactured, how it is going to get assembled on site. So that's a paradigm shift, at least that's happened slowly in the industry now, where buildings are it's a response to a need. And the need is, there's cost, there's time, there's safety issues, there's sort of time schedule issues which is addressing. So overall, whenever we're talking about technology, whether it's AR, VR, generative design, or DFMA, or robotics, why are we using it? So the whole approach, I think, should be more solution-oriented. So rather than technology for the sake of technology, just because it looks very cool to have something doing this, it should be in response to a strong need, right? So it should be solving a problem. So a problem-solving approach using technology, I think that's what this whole digitalization and involvement of technology is in terms of architecture and construction, because there's so many options available, and in some places, because of construction constraints or site constraints, you may need a robotics, which may save your time or bring in more. But if it's a site which actually doesn't need so much of security, or maybe time is not so much of an issue, then you may use some other technology there. So you have this entire kit of parts or bag of technology tools which are in various development processes, which can be sort of picked and chosen and applied to some of these projects. So I think we have about 8-9 minutes left, and I think I'll stop there, and then we can sort of open it up for discussion. Thanks.
So I'll just add to what Samir said about disruptive changes in consulting. I believe all of us know the robotic division of Foster and Partner with the tie-up with Boston Dynamics, where they have this industrial robot called Spot, and that is actually monitoring all the construction exercises on site. So that is a kind of disruptive change in consulting that we're seeing a US company come up with, where they've actually replaced the entire concept of project management consulting and construction management and turned into one robot. And that is the kind of disruption that we also need to look forward to, and to ensure that India isn't left far behind in embracing all this which is happening.
Well, talking of disruption, I think this disruption that's happened in 2020 is something that we should make use of, because in general, it's human nature to keep on postponing things. You become very, I would say that we go to the lowest energy levels, but we have had this disruption, and each one of us probably learned how to reinvent our working processes. So I think this disruption is something that if we don't make use of this wave would probably go away.
So, shall we conclude it? So,
Yeah, I just had.
okay, you should say. Yeah, please, if all our eminent panelists have put their views about the. Shivani, you want to say something? Please carry
I
on.
was just wanting to give in a few examples of disruption, basically. One is, as you said, Mr. Jain, that in the year 2020, one of the major disruptions was seen in, I'm taking a different industry example, but medical field saw a lot of ventilators which were made out of 3D print technology. And they reduced something that would have taken 5 months of manufacturing down to 24 days. That example, and also back to the example of 3D print manufacturing using concrete, our buildings are going to, they've got the time down to 100 hours and at a very, very reduced cost. What that does is it's solving the whole issue of housing. And when we look at the 60 million houses that need to come up by 2022, that's a government target. I think that's fairly achievable with this kind of a technology at our hands.
Very valid point, Shivani. I would add on to that. The only thing that we consume more after water is concrete. We consume 3 tons of concrete per person around the globe. Most of it is going to come in India. And what Shivani said is very, very relevant to tomorrow. Unless we adopt these new technologies, we can't be sustainable in terms of materials. We will be wasting a lot of formwork, we waste a lot of concrete, and we do need to adopt to certain technologies that we just keep talking about being sustainable, but this is a time that we can actually get on to doing something, and all of us are needed for it, and we should get into this disruptive mold of things.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the housing project that you mentioned and you're talking about wastage, just come back to what I was mentioning about DFMA. When you're doing something off-site and you're doing something which is more watched and monitored, then there's a chance of reducing wastage, which for a country like India, it's very important that we optimally use our materials, whether it's concrete or steel or anything. So there's technology as a way of making sure that we're doing lean construction, we're making sure that there's minimum wastage.
Samir, on that, so this is something for the panel. I personally am from the opinion, I'm worried about full automation on construction sites for industries like India, where the labor force is crazy, and the intelligence of the labor force is also amazing. So while yes, it's awesome to have a robot jumping around, checking my shuttering, or picking out brick and planting it wherever it's required. Personally, I think that as architects, as designers, as construction managers, there is a sense of responsibility to imbibe, so that this labor force is also put to a use. Maybe there's an upskilling that is required. So that's why I cited this example of Hologram, where just the mason is using the headset. That's all, and now he can put up any goddamn brick wall that's as crazy as you would imagine. So I just want, just throwing it on the panel, what's the opinion, because you just put it Indian context also out there.
I would like to add to that. We are talking about labor and all the construction, workers becoming irrelevant. I don't think they will become irrelevant, because you will need a parallel process to produce these things off-site, and they will move from on-site to off-site, and then become a little more technical in producing those things off-site, and then eventually bringing them on-site and doing it. So it is not the labor which is becoming irrelevant, it is their job which is changing from being on-site to off-site.
Yeah, very much like the job is changing for architects, for project management consultants, for everybody. So I mean, that's what it is. As Kavi said, change is the only thing constant. We need to, we can't ignore it. We need to embrace it, or be more disruptive, and then move forward with it.
Yeah, for example, sorry, go ahead. For example, when computers came, you're saying typists will, sort of lose their jobs, but then, typists sort of, they get on to writing a computer, using a computer.
And everything actually boils down to economics. If there is a technology that is going to be adopted, if it's going to make economic sense, the bottom line is there. The bottom line is the bottom line. So unless the technologies that we're talking of are cheaper than the labor-oriented ones, the adoption in mass will not happen. So that's, and as we have a lot of architects community here, so my just small take on the future in the next 15 years, if we don't reinvent ourselves, the profession is going to be limited to either very, very large giants who have the wherewithal to make the building, the product, or you will be very, very small individualistic retainers who would be helping them do it. The mid segment is going to be wiped out. That's my personal take.
To add light to this, I just want to mention our potential to embrace this change. Hindu temple architecture was based on fractal geometry, and fractal geometry forms the basis of parametrics, which started all this war. So let's go back to our roots, rediscover ourselves, and set in for a further disruptive change than this market has seen.
Can I throw a twister to this discussion? It's about Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk saying that, there's going to be so much joblessness, that we're going to eventually have to pay people without them having to do any work. So this whole discussion around how we are going to support a social fabric which is going to be without jobs, they've already been testing this in a few villages in Madhya Pradesh, paying people who are not doing any work. That is, I think that's again another kind of a disruption and revolution on its way.
Okay. So
I would just like to add, we have been talking about micro level and big scale projects, but I would like to just squeeze down and come to a more, micro level problem that we normally face. Is that there are so many, we just discussed that, a large number of housing coming into play, and who are actually, taking on those housing. They are, middle class families who are getting into those housing sectors, and the first thing they require, I'm just talking about a problem, is that they want a wardrobe to be designed for them. Okay, now they cannot afford to get a designer to do that, But over here, these kind of technologies like AR or augmented reality, where there are companies who are developing these softwares where they can just click a picture of their house and put the templates in, and they get the design of a wardrobe right in their bedroom, and that solves their problem. So that is also where we are looking at. That is disruption where they don't need to hire a designer for a very micro level job, and that is also not possible.
Yeah,
I
Arindam,
appreciate-
I differ at one place. You said they can't afford designers like us. With us bidding at 0.2, 0.3%,
No.
I'm sure they can afford us.
No.
See,
I'm not
appreciate
talking about
the
afford
enthusiasm of
designer.
all the panelists, because it's such a subject.
Sure.
It's such a vast subject that I think a day or two will be too less to keep on discussing about these technological aspects of the technologies. But I must thanks to the enthusiasm of all our panelists to enlighten us on the aspect of technology and its effect on the design process of architecture, construction industry, and production also. So thank you very much to all our panelists.
Thank you all the panelists for sharing your enlightened